Selma Šabanović again, and I'm really excited to be here with these 4 amazing social roboticists. And what we're going to talk about today is some of the latest developments in social robotics and how they relate to the UN Strategic Development Goals. So, as you all probably know, social robotics shows a lot of promise in supporting health and well-being, in education, in various work contexts. And most of this is done through collaboration with human workers. One of the roles that maybe people here might be particularly interested in is that people have suggested that robots might actually be able to do some of the work of politicians and diplomats. So, you know, an interesting proposition. But one of the things that we see while doing this work is that along with all the promises, there are many, many, many challenges. So some of them are just technical. Social robots are often not robust enough to use day in, day out for very long periods of time. They might require technical infrastructures like, you know, high-speed internet, broadband, or all kinds of other things that are not available everywhere. They might be too expensive for many of the users that might actually benefit most from them. We often hear about replacement of human workers. That's a concern. And then also, of course, with all of this data and the use of intelligent interactive technologies, there are ethical concerns, privacy, as well as impacts on humans socially, mentally, cognitively, psychologically. And so the work of today's panelists takes the social good as a foundational goal. So I really look forward to talking with them, both about what they do and what they think more broadly about this really promising and interesting new domain of technological, socio-technical development. So I think we're first going to start with Shelly, Dr. Shelly Levy-Tzedek. So please go ahead.
Thanks very much, Selma. So I'll tell you about a project that we did with Pepper the robot for stroke rehabilitation. People who've had a stroke, 75% of them suffer from an upper limb disability, which limits their ability to dress themselves, feed themselves, take care of personal hygiene, go shopping, drive themselves places, and of course engage in recreational activity. In order to get therapy, they often need to be driven somewhere. They need many hours of a therapist, and mostly they need thousands of hours of self-practice. And many people don't do that. They don't do the many thousands of hours that they need to re-practice activities that used to be trivial before the stroke. And so what we are proposing is to use socially assistive robots to help people do the exercises that they need to do on their own. So this way it will be accompanied, they will get feedback on their training, and a longitudinal report can be produced for both the patient and the clinician. And the way that we've done that is we engaged in participatory design, which Selma mentioned earlier, where we engage all of the stakeholders in the process. So that means patients, their family members, and their clinicians. So very briefly, this is the platform that we developed. There's Pepper the robot, and with it, there's a height adjustable table with everyday objects. It's fully sensorized. We give instructions. All of this is based on input from clinicians, what needs to be done. And then there are different levels of difficulty. It has a cognitive component, a motor component, and people do sessions with a robot for 15 sessions in the clinic, so over 5 to 7 weeks. And like I said, instructions and feedback are provided by the robot. And let me very briefly tell you about the clinical results. We collected a lot of data that I won't have time to tell you about today, but in terms of clinical results, you can see here on the left the Fugl-Meyer score, FMA for short. That's used in the clinic to evaluate impairment. Higher is better, so less impairment. You can see we had 3 groups. All of them continued regular care. The control group stopped there. The computer and the robot group also used our platform, where the robot group had instructions and feedback provided by the robot, and the computer group had instructions and feedback provided by a computer. Everything else was exactly identical. And you can see that there was no difference in the score, this clinical score that indicates impairment, no difference in the control group, a trend for improvement in the computer group, and a significant improvement in the robot group. And that is replicated also in another clinical metric that we took. It's called the ART. It's used mainly in research. And again, no difference in the control group, a trend for improvement in the computer group, and a significant improvement in the robot group. So that means that people went home and were able to better use their arm to perform everyday actions when they use this system after 15 sessions. So we showed that we can use technology, specifically socially assistive robots, to bring about effective improvements in clinical outcomes, particularly for stroke patients. And this is in line with the UN's Sustainable Development Goals of good health and well-being, as well as reduced inequalities in case these can be deployed in areas that have less access to care. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Shelly. I do have a question for you. So in the work that you mentioned, how do novelty effects, if at all, play a role in the results that you show?
This is a great question. One of the things we were concerned about is what happens with this novelty effect. The novelty effect is what happens when you get a new gadget, you're really excited about it, you use it for 2-3 days, and then you let it collect dust on a shelf. Does that happen with robots as well? And this is particularly important in rehabilitation because rehabilitation is a long-term process. So we had to make sure that the novelty effect doesn't play a role here. So that is why, that's part of the reason why we had 15 sessions. So in case the novelty effect played a role, we would see it wear off, the novelty wear off, and what happens then. We saw no dropout in the robot group. There was a dropout in the computer group, which again was completely identical, except for the physical embodiment of the robot. And we had in-depth interviews with our patients and asked them, what kept you coming back? And they said, at the beginning, it was exciting to see the robot, but then I kept coming back because I actually could use my arm in every day at home. So I was better able to button my shirt, better able to slice bread, and that's why I kept coming back. So even if the novelty effect did play a role initially, once it wore off, the actual functional benefit from the system kept them coming back.
Thank you so much. So next up is Dr. Cindy Bethel.
Okay. Hi, I'm Dr. Cindy Bethel. I'm from Mississippi State University. I am a professor of computer science and engineering. I'm also the Billy J. Ball Endowed Professor in Engineering. One of the projects that we're talking about today is Therabot, which you can see sitting here on the table. Therabot is a therapeutic support animal. So animal-assisted therapy has been very beneficial, and but some people can't take care of a dog, or they're allergic to a dog. And so we've created Therabot to kind of take that place. So Therabot is designed to be very soft and cuddly like a stuffed animal, so it provides a lot of comfort to people, but also responds and interacts with them through touch sensing. It has a built-in heartbeat so that the heartbeat can adjust based on what's happening with somebody. So we're using it to try to provide support in mental health care. We're also starting to use it now to provide support to children that are talking about really challenging events that they're going through, such as bullying or maltreatment or anything along those lines. So it provides something that they can feel relatable and are comfortable with. So as part of our research, we're looking at the Sustainable Development Goals of good health and well-being. So this provides that good health and well-being. Inside Therabot, there's, like I said, the heartbeat, but there's also touch sensors, and we're also going through participatory design as well with Selma, actually, working with elderly people to have depression or anxiety. And so we're now developing different types of sensing to put into Therabot. It has touch sensing right now, so there's touch sensing. Currently, it's not activated at the moment, but there's touch sensing in the top of the head, across the back. I'll be talking more about this on stage later today. And so there's different types of touch sensing throughout the robot. It makes barks. It reacts similarly to a real dog, but definitely less care. So we're developing the good health and well-being. We're also looking at reducing inequalities so that this can provide support to people who are going through challenging times or fighting social challenges. We're also looking to support industry innovation and infrastructure. So our goal is to eventually commercialize Therabot. So we're trying to, right now it's a prototype research robot, and we are working towards commercializing, and hopefully making it affordable and available to more people to be able to use Therabot.
Thank you, Cindy. So quick question for you. So in your work, you develop hardware, software, you work with users. So how do you combine all those things, and why do you think it's important to do all the kind of the whole circle of life of the robot in one?
I think it's important to understand all aspects of the robot, and by doing that, I also get to engage with a lot of different disciplines, which I think is really important. So we have mechanical engineering students who work with the hardware. We have electrical engineering students that do with electronics. We have computer science students who work on the programming and the software and the AI development. And then we have the user studies that we do, so we can bring psychology students or sociology students in and work with them as well. So this provides an opportunity to increase STEM awareness and participation, but also I think when you have a better understanding of the hardware and software and how it all works together and how people are going to interact and engage with it, I think it makes a huge difference in the quality of the interactions and how people are going to use those robotics technologies. And hopefully we can gain better acceptance in our world by having these robots there.
Thank you very much. So our next speaker is going to be Dr. Rodolphe Hasselvander.
So thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to present you Brog Robotics and how our robots can provide social good for people and how they address key issues of United Nations like education, inclusion, well-being. Wait, try to launch, okay. So a few words about Brog Robotics. Today we are a key player in social robotics in Europe because we have already deployed more than 2,000 AI-driven buddy robots, mainly in France, through specific verticals with strong social impact because we develop robots for good. Robots that will help and assist humans in their daily life with the vision that tomorrow everyone will have personal robots. Like today, everyone has a smartphone and a computer. So we address key issues of our society because we have deployed some robots for education in schools, for children, and also for teachers. Our robots are also used for inclusion of children with autism. And also for sick children, we have to stay a long period in hospital to pursue their studies. And we also deploy our robot for elder care, so to help seniors at home or in retirement home. And to address all these use cases, we have developed Buddy. So Buddy is an emotional companion robot. It's a perfect incarnation of robotics and artificial intelligence. He received the Best of Innovation Award at CES Las Vegas. And he has many sensors to allow him to react like a real character. And it's very important for us because when we have designed Buddy, we have two things in mind. The first was the acceptability. And we believe that if we can create an emotional link between human and machine, generate empathy, this is the key for mass adoption of robots. It's why we have worked hard on the shape of the robot, on the size of the robot, because it will be used by children, but also by seniors. And the second thing was the evolutivity of the robots. It's why we also provide our robot as a platform with an SDK to allow the developer community to create innovative applications based on the unique capabilities of Buddy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And so my question for you, so you work with so many diverse populations, children. How do you think of the social good for all of these different kinds of users?
So, population seems to be different, but sometimes the needs are the same. And as an example, we deploy some robots for children in hospital, and the use case is the robot is their avatar in the classroom, and they are in the room in the hospital room. They have a tablet, and thanks to that, they can control the robot at distance. So they can be present in the classroom where they are and in the hospital. So they can discuss with their classmate, with the teacher. If they want, they can show their face here on the screen. They can take pictures. They can go visit museum with the class. So it's really important. And when you see people come to see us and say, thanks to you, my children can continue his study, and she's crying. She's crying. You produce robots that can provide social good for people. But for children with autism, it's also important because there is a specific link between autistic kid and robots. It's easy for them to interact with a robot, with an emotional robot like Buddy, and thanks to that we can help them to improve their communication skills and other kind of learning. And for seniors, it's also a perfect companion because this population are alone so long time. So Buddy can be a real companion, able to take care of them and to send alert if there is some problem. He can improve social link with the family also, and just be a companion able to entertain them. And now we have integrated ChatGPT in Buddy, so it's possible to have a real conversation. For this population, it's very important.
Thank you. And finally, Laura Boccanfuso is going to talk about some of her work.
Thank you, Selma. Hi, I'm Dr. Laura Boccanfuso. I'm the CEO of Van Robotics. So Van Robotics was founded in 2016 after about a decade of research in human-robot interaction, specifically looking at how robots can be leveraged to help students with different learning and developmental challenges. So essentially, ABI was designed with the specific intent to support learning acceleration among students, specifically in the younger elementary school and older elementary school grades. The three ways in which ABI is really differentiated from other social robots in the market is that it adjusts to difficulty. So if a student is struggling, ABI will actually slow the lesson down, a math, a reading, or a social emotional learning lesson. It will also provide additional explanation if that student is struggling. It also adapts to attention. So if a student is off task during the lesson itself, ABI will actually pause the lesson, call the student out by name, wave at them, get their attention, and remind them to stay focused in the lesson. If that inattention continues, ABI will actually lead them through a brain break, which is a technique that a lot of teachers will use in the classroom to help their students refocus. So that attention monitoring and adaptation is really important. And so one of the questions that we asked ourselves when we launched the company back in 2016 was, what is it that ABI can do to help accelerate learning from a social aspect? It is a social robot. And what we know from many years of research is that a student's confidence level, a student's engagement level are high predictors of success in academics, regardless of the subject matter. So the whole student support is really critical, and it's one of the ways in which we look at the importance and the impact of social robots specifically, and with ABI as well. So ABI is, I don't know if the video will play, maybe not. But ABI's use cases are primarily in the public school and private school classrooms. So ABI will work actually to supplement a teacher's kindergarten through 5th grade class. So most often, in many of our school districts across the US, we have about 260 different organizations across the US currently using the robots. Is that the teacher will use it to reinforce and to practice specific math, reading, and social emotional learning skills while he or she is busy with another student. So it acts as a classroom assistant to supplement the single or maybe even two teachers in a classroom full of 22, sometimes even as many as 30 or 35 students in a single classroom. Our goal, our SDG goal, obviously is alignment with high quality, accessible education to all students.
Thank you, Laura. And I'm curious, you do so much work with children. What are some principles that you keep in mind as you're designing for children and deploying with children?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when we launched the program, what we noticed is that there are a lot of robots that have been designed from the lab perspective to conduct good research that we can use as a starting point to learn about social robotics and their role in education. One of the things that we realize is that the developments that were happening at the research level were very far beyond what the knowledge level was and the training was of our end users. So one of our major principles is designing social robots to be able to meet schools, teachers, students where they currently are, to provide them the training support and the professional development that they need to really leverage the technology well so it has the greatest impact. And the second major principle is that we also design it in such a way that it can grow to where those educators are going. And so those two major principles really drive much of what we do at Van Robotics. Hope you'll come and see Abby. We've got a booth here today too.
Thank you all. So we have some general questions for our panelists. If someone in the audience has a question, you can also kind of wave at us, but I'm going to throw one out to just start, which is you all work on social robots. You're all interested in contributing, benefiting society. What do you think makes social robots particularly conducive or useful for providing a social good?
So I can talk about a humanoid robot. I mean, we use various ones, but Pepper is the one I used for the research I showed you today. And we see that with a humanoid robot, people project on it anthropomorphic qualities for better. So they use the best side of anthropomorphism and realizing it's a robot. I'll give an example. Our robot was making a ton of mistakes. Sorry, Pepper people over there. A ton of mistakes during the research. And we asked our patients, what do you make of it? How did you feel about it making so many mistakes? And they said, I'm a human, I make mistakes. He's a human, he makes mistakes, right? So they were referring to it as a human in that sense. At the same time, they were saying that sometimes they prefer to come to a session with a robot rather than work with a clinician because they felt that it was not judgmental. So two sides of that coin. I do want to stress at this time, we're not looking to replace clinicians. This is to augment the clinician's work. But it's interesting how people perceive the humanoid robot as both having the fallacies of a human, but also having advantages of not being human.
I'm just going to build off of that one. I also do research with interviewing children about sensitive topics through robots. And one of the two really interesting findings we found with this was that children felt they could talk to the robot about things they couldn't tell anybody else. So that was really a huge thing to learn. And so they also felt they couldn't hide anything from the robot. The robot had some type of magical powers, and they couldn't lie to it because they would know. So that was kind of interesting. So I think robots provide something that is relatable, especially to children. It's something that's their size or smaller. It's something that they can relate to. They do feel there's no judgment, and that's a big thing. And we can program it specifically so it doesn't indicate judgment. As much as we try to control how we interact, we still do facial expressions automatically and things like that. And I think a robot can be more controlled in that regard.
Yes, I want to echo that. And I really, what you said earlier resonated, I think, about the feedback that you get from the end user. It really drives much of, I think, all of our research and all of the work that we do collectively is that, when a student doesn't feel inhibited or maybe shy or afraid to answer a question, it helps build their confidence. And having that confidence will enable students to be able to take risks and maybe answer a question they don't necessarily know the answer to. It's part of the learning process, right? Failing is part of the learning process, as we all know. And so being able to have the confidence and the ability to not be judged or not feel judged is huge in that trajectory, in that learning scope.
Yes, totally agree. As an example, we work with educators, we work with children with autism, and when you see these educators come to see us and to say, wow, it's incredible, because usually this kid can't be concentrated more than 2 minutes, and he's been playing with Buddy for more than 30 minutes. Wow, how is it possible? But it's possible because we create this link, this empathy, this character, and children will want to be nice with Buddy. They want Buddy to be happy, so they will work, and it's in a funny way, a more engaging way, and very, very interesting to see that. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you. Anyone wish to hazard a question? Aha! Awesome. Oh, no.
I'm wondering, as you use the robot as you know as with elderly people and maybe people who are a little bit losing cognitive capacities, is there not a danger to make them more confused about, this is not a real person? And is there not a danger to heighten isolation and the feeling that, we are actually just, because the reality is it's just a computer, or it's just a machine. So I was just wondering, it's always, there's this movie, The Robot, that talks about that. And there's always this doubt amongst layperson like me.
I will try to give some answers. Maybe we have another question about ethics after, but just few elements. So I totally agree with you. And the most important thing is to be as clear as possible with people about the positioning of the robot. What is it? It's not a human, it's not a pet. And what is it and what is not? It's really important, but you're right, we make disappear technology and we create a companion, a character. And in the one way, it's very interesting for us because they are alone for a long period. So thanks to the robot, I heard many times from seniors with body, I'm not alone anymore. So it's very good for us to hear that. But we have to be, as I said, very clear to explain what is it and try to not confuse people.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I think this is a crucial point, and I think it's part of the reason why we need regulation in this field, especially for rehabilitation context, especially when we have vulnerable population, whether it's education, children, whether it's older adults who might have a cognitive impairment. And I think that one of the rules should be that it should be clarity, just like you said, we should make it clear that this is a robot. And then another thing we should do is evaluate per context. So a robot for stroke is not the same as a robot for Parkinson's, is not the same as a robot for dementia. And in each of these cases, we have to evaluate the benefits versus the risks. And if there's too much of a risk, then don't use a robot there.
Yeah, and one more thing about that, because I think that brings up a really good point about how we refer to the robots. They are tools. And the human will always be the gold standard. Right? The expert will always be the gold standard. We can bring innumerably more traits, qualities to that interaction than a robot ever could. And so I think that keeping that perspective and conveying that perspective to the end users is crucial to being able to be effective and to have long-term success.
Thank you so much. So unfortunately, we have run out of time, although I know that the speakers are going to be around. Their robots are here, they're here, so if you want to have some more conversations, please go ahead. This is what it's all about here for the next day and a half. So enjoy the rest of the show. Thank you.